went to Disney. It's her birthday on Thursday. So today was kind of like a little celebration, kind of.
Rachel Zegler's career has taken a dramatic fall from grace following the disastrous release of Disney's Snow White remake. Once celebrated as one of Hollywood's promising young stars, her name has now become closely tied to what many are calling one of the biggest box office failures in Disney's history. According to reports, Zegler retreated to New York City after the backlash, where witnesses claimed she was spotted traveling on ordinary subway trains in an effort to blend in and avoid attention. This attempt at anonymity stood in stark contrast to the glamorous, red carpet lifestyle she had enjoyed only months earlier, a visible symbol of just how quickly fortunes can change in Hollywood. The Snow White remake itself was nothing short of a catastrophe. Social media quickly filled with pictures and videos of empty theaters, with fans mocking Disney for releasing a film no one seemed to want. By its fourth weekend, the movie had lost more than half of its original screenings, as theaters rushed to pull it early to make way for films audiences actually cared about. The box office numbers told the story with brutal clarity. The film suffered a staggering 66% decline in its second weekend alone, sending Disney on a financial downward spiral. With a reported $250 million production budget, before marketing, the film grossed only $143 million worldwide. Worse still, critics were unforgiving, with the movie landing among the lowest-rated films on IMDb, sitting at a bleak 6 out of 10. The humiliation didn't stop there. One fan posted a TikTok showing she was the sole audience member at a Snow White screening, gleefully filming herself in an entirely empty theater. This quickly went viral, becoming symbolic of the film's failure. By mid-April 2025, industry trackers confirmed that screenings were being cancelled at unprecedented rates. Some showings reportedly sold as few as 3 tickets in total, while average daily revenue sank to barely $53. Theatre owners, unable to justify devoting space to a dead title, prioritized upcoming blockbusters like Minecraft and Captain America: Brave New World, both of which were drawing crowds Disney could only dream of. Even overseas, Disney's problems multiplied. In China, where the company had mounted an aggressive marketing push, audiences simply didn't show up. Videos circulated of completely empty IMAX screenings, despite posters plastered on buses, buildings, and even inside apartment complexes. One Shanghai journalist reported that his own showing had just 5 people in attendance: himself, a friend, and 3 others scattered across the vast theater. Instead of salvaging the film's reputation, these stories only reinforced the narrative of failure. To make matters worse, Zegler herself unwittingly deepened the embarrassment. In a misguided attempt to control the conversation, she posted a TikTok of herself sitting alone in a nearly empty theater, hoping to spin the situation into a quirky viral moment. Instead, it fueled more ridicule, with many critics suggesting she was mocking the very audience she had alienated during the press tour. Her earlier comments about Snow White and her outspoken political statements had already sparked backlash, with insiders now describing her as a high-risk actress whom studios are hesitant to hire. Reports of emotional breakdowns and a difficult attitude on set only added fuel to the fire, painting the picture of a star whose career was rapidly slipping through her fingers. Behind the scenes, the damage extended far beyond one actress. Industry observers note that Zegler's behavior and the disastrous reception of Snow White may have forced Disney to reconsider its entire slate of woke live-action remakes. The studio, already reeling from multiple underperforming projects, has been left with an expensive black eye. Initial projections suggested losses would hover around $115 million, but with the global gross barely reaching $195 million, final losses are now expected to climb to nearly $145 million. For a studio of Disney's size, this is more than just a financial blow. It is a public relations nightmare that undermines the brand's once unshakable reputation for box office dominance. Worse still, the collapse of Snow White may signal the unraveling of Disney's broader strategy of remaking its animated classics in live-action form. While some projects like The Lion King and Aladdin found success in the past, recent attempts have increasingly struggled to resonate with audiences. The backlash against Snow White has accelerated calls from fans and critics alike for Disney to abandon this remake-driven model and return to creating original stories. The failure has become not just a referendum on one film, but on an entire corporate philosophy. Even Disney's leadership has been forced into awkward positions. In a recent interview, CEO Bob Iger was pressed about the company being labeled too woke. His response only highlighted the uncertainty surrounding Disney's direction, as he admitted he no longer knows what woke even means. He insisted the company is simply trying to entertain while making a positive impact, but such statements did little to calm shareholders or win back audiences who feel alienated by Disney's recent creative choices. For Rachel Zegler, the personal cost may be even greater. Once positioned as a rising star with opportunities across film and television, her reputation has been tainted by association with one of Hollywood's most infamous flops. Major studios are said to be re-evaluating her involvement in future projects, fearing both the financial risk and the backlash her name now carries. What began as a career-defining role has instead become a cautionary tale, one that will likely follow her for years to come. In the end, the Snow White fiasco is more than just a failed movie. It's a symbol of an industry at a crossroads. It has exposed the fragility of Disney's reliance on nostalgia, the dangers of alienating audiences, and the unpredictable volatility of celebrity culture in the age of social media. For Rachel Zegler, it may mark the end of her meteoric rise, while for Disney, it could be the wake-up call that forces a rethinking of the very foundation of its modern strategy. Disney CEO Bob Iger recently addressed the controversy surrounding the company's direction, admitting in an interview that he doesn't fully understand the modern use of the word woke. He explained that Disney's primary mission has always been to entertain, and while the studio tries to do so responsibly and with a positive impact, entertainment comes first. Yet, despite his remarks, actions speak louder than words. In the wake of Snow White's catastrophic failure, Disney has quietly hit the brakes on its next live-action project. According to Tangled insiders, the company had been preparing what would have been its most ambitious remake yet, with a budget surpassing even that of Snow White. But after the financial disaster and unrelenting backlash, Disney abruptly halted production, a clear sign that the strategy it once banked its future on is crumbling. Rachel Zegler's involvement only compounded the crisis. Even before Snow White officially bombed at the box office, insiders revealed that Disney executives were already nervous about her increasingly controversial public image. Once the numbers came in, the fallout spread like wildfire. Not only did studios begin to reconsider her future roles, but Zegler herself reportedly spiraled into what sources described as meltdown mode. Online trolling over her political comments became relentless, and industry whispers suggest she may be seeking therapy to cope with the backlash. Her reputation, once tied to the promise of becoming a household name, is now front and center in a Hollywood cautionary tale. Meanwhile, her co-stars have made efforts to quietly distance themselves from the project and from Zegler. Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen, recently spoke about the film's failure in careful terms, never mentioning Zegler directly but strongly implying that behind-the-scenes discord and lack of teamwork were to blame. According to insiders, Disney executives pressured Gadot to publicly defend the company's creative direction and even to speak in support of Zegler, but she refused, recognizing that her own career was on the line. One report even claims that Gadot directly confronted Zegler, telling her that she alone bore responsibility for sinking the film's box office performance. Accounts from the set suggest Zegler's domineering behavior was evident throughout production. What had once been mere speculation among fans is now supported by testimony from those who worked on the film. Zegler not only attempted to influence major creative decisions but also openly criticized the original 1937 Snow White in interviews, calling its love story outdated and labeling the prince a stalker. Her remarks quickly circulated online, drawing sharp criticism from fans who cherished the original's timeless fairy tale qualities. By mocking the very foundation of the story, she alienated longtime Disney loyalists and made it increasingly difficult for the studio to market the film. Her version of Snow White was designed to be a fiercely independent woman without a romance or prince, an intentional break from the traditional fairy tale formula that had defined Disney for generations. While Zegler defended the decision as progressive, the departure divided executives, alienated her co-stars, and enraged audiences worldwide. The result was a performance and a film that failed to capture either the magic of the original or the support of modern audiences. In contrast, her co-star Andrew Burnap reportedly dedicated himself fully to his role, trying to salvage what he could from a crumbling production, but his efforts were overshadowed by the controversy surrounding Zegler. The scale of the fallout has made clear that Snow White's disaster is no longer just about one bad movie. It has become symbolic of a broader collapse in Disney's live-action remake strategy, once viewed as a billion-dollar pillar of its long-term future. With over 1,200 theaters dropping the film, global box office losses climbing into the hundreds of millions, and even insiders now admitting the company may abandon certain remakes altogether, the strategy has gone from lucrative to toxic almost overnight. Rachel Zegler's interviews, her polarizing political remarks, and her behavior behind the scenes have not only damaged a single production but may have derailed an entire creative direction for Disney. As her reputation continues to suffer and major studios quietly distance themselves from her, her future in Hollywood looks more uncertain than ever. Instead of being remembered as the star who helped usher in Disney's next great era, Zegler now finds herself at the center of one of its most infamous failures. For Disney, the Snow White remake will not be remembered as another triumphant reimagining of a classic. It will stand instead as a cautionary symbol of what happens when a studio loses touch with its audience, and when an actress's words overshadow her role. Theater owners were left with no justification to keep Snow White on their screens once the numbers became impossible to defend. In some cases, entire showings sold no more than 3 tickets, with daily averages collapsing to around $53, an almost unthinkable figure for a film that cost hundreds of millions to produce and market. This wasn't a mild underperformance, it was a full-scale implosion. What stung even more for Disney was the realization that the film's creative choices had alienated the very audience it was meant to capture. By stripping away the central romance, reworking character motivations, and reshaping the beloved fairy tale into something nearly unrecognizable, the studio had gambled on modernizing a timeless classic and lost. Industry analysts have since dissected the failure, pointing not only to the creative missteps but also to Rachel Zegler's divisive behavior on the promotional circuit. Her comments dismissing the original story as outdated and problematic may have been intended as progressive, but instead, they fueled fan resentment and hardened the backlash. Disney ended up with a product that satisfied no one. New audiences saw little reason to care about the reimagining, while lifelong fans of the 1937 classic felt insulted and ignored. The financial consequences were staggering. Losses are now projected to exceed $145 million, making Snow White not just a disappointment but one of the most expensive blunders in recent Hollywood memory. To put that into perspective, the money spent on this single failed project could have financed several mid-budget original films, any of which might have had a better chance of connecting with audiences. The shockwaves have already spread within Disney. The decision to halt production on the planned live-action Tangled, which insiders claimed was set to be the company's most expensive remake yet, shows that executives are finally rethinking their approach. The strategy of endlessly recycling animated classics into live-action spectacles, once considered a safe bet after billion-dollar hits like The Lion King and Aladdin, now looks increasingly fragile. At the center of this storm is Rachel Zegler, whose career trajectory has been derailed in spectacular fashion. Not long ago, she was hailed as a rising star after her breakout performance in West Side Story. Now, however, her future in Hollywood appears deeply uncertain. Insiders say major studios are hesitant to attach her to high-profile projects, wary of her reputation for going off script during press tours and her strained relationships with co-stars. Reports of controlling behavior during production and a perceived lack of respect for the source material have further cemented the image of a young actress who has become more of a liability than an asset. This professional freefall is all the more striking when contrasted with the success of other films in the same market. While Snow White struggled to sell a handful of tickets, audiences flocked to theaters for faithful adaptations and bold, original stories. Families that might have once made Snow White an event instead turned away in droves, leaving cavernous empty theaters that became a viral punchline on social media.
That's crazy.
Who's the most famous contact you have in your phone?
Steven Spielberg.
For Disney, the implications may extend far beyond one film or one actress. If Snow White's failure represents a broader shift in audience preferences, the studio's billion-dollar remake strategy could be nearing its end. While earlier entries in the trend earned staggering profits, This collapse has shown just how vulnerable even the most iconic intellectual property can be when mishandled. The brand that once symbolized magic and reliability now faces a moment of reckoning. As for Rachel Zegler, her path forward is anything but clear. Hollywood has witnessed comebacks before, but they rarely follow failures of this magnitude, especially when tied to behind-the-scenes scandal and public backlash. The perception problem she faces, mocking beloved material, clashing with co-stars, and alienating audiences, will not be easy to erase. What was once meant to be her defining role has instead become a cautionary tale. And for Disney, Snow White is no longer just a financial loss. It is a stark reminder that even the world's most powerful studio can stumble when it loses sight of what made its stories timeless in the first place.